Good. Okay. How many members are present, Drew?
I counted 11.
Oh, good in there.
So I'm waiting on 2 more members to meet to reach that quorum.
Well, we're waiting, Drew. I'm going to fiddle with my laptop and see if I can get that up and going.
Okay.
It's easier than the iPad here.
Drew, I don't know if you or other members have heard about Willard Richards passing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear about that. I did read that about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was instrumental in a lot of things, but he really helped the SMART training. Did a lot of work there.
Shauna, was your item action for this from this committee?
In as much as if the committee wants to see something different, then they're able to say that, or they accept that this is the schedule that we will present.
Just want to double check all the action items because I know that what I see are the minutes that we can bring back next month if we want to proceed as committee as the whole until we can reach a quorum. Because the project presentation scheduled is not action for the committee, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So Chair Blythe, you would like, I could propose starting the meeting as committee as the whole, and then there will be no action items. And then I would bring back the minutes in the next meeting.
I think that's suitable. Anybody have a issue with that? Go ahead and speak up now.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming. Let's go ahead and get started. I will apologize. I'm a little bit challenged. I'm working off a very small screen, so I can't see everybody. And so if I misstep, Drew, you'll catch me before I hit my forehead on the concrete. Good. So anyways,
I'm ready.
Thank you guys all for coming, and thank you for noting Willard's passing as well. He was an instrumental part of this committee, and I worked with him on several different things, and a good man, and we'll miss him. So I was sorry to hear that. Introductions, I'll start. I'm John Bly. Executive Vice President at the Engineering Contractors Association, and I've been on this Citizens Advisory Committee for probably 12 or 13 years now. So and let's move on. And I can't see who I've got. So Drew, can you?
Yeah. So just in the interest of time, I'll just read the names I see on the list.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll start on my right. We have Jeff Stutzman, who's represented from the city of Petaluma to be presenting on the Petaluma River Trail today. David Oster from the 1st District.
Right, correct.
Brian Ling from the 4th District. Shauna Gause from SCTA. Tom Banning from the 3rd District. Mark Soyland from the 2nd District. Tanya Naraf with the RCPA. Tom Conlin with the Sonoma County Conservation Coalition. Dana Ture with SCTA, Chair John Bly with the Engineering Contractors Association, Steve Bertelbaugh, Sierra Club, Musa Abbasi, Vice Chair, Santa Rosa Metro Chamber, David Raperda, SCTA, Orlando Ramirez, Caltrans District 4, Gina Erickson, from the SCTA Transit Paratransit Coordinating Committee, Eris Weaver from the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and Nancy Adams from the City of Santa Rosa.
Thank you, Drew. If you give me 1 minute, I think I can get off of this small screen and get back onto my laptop. So I'm going to be gone for just a second here.
And then Ross Clendenin from SCTA RCPA.
Much better. Thank you for obliging me that. Thank you guys for all for coming. Is there any public comment that anybody would like to start with? And we're going to hold off on any action items, Drew, until we have a forum.
Excuse me, I see Tom Conlon had his hand up. Sorry about that, Tom.
Okay.
There, it's not on the agenda. It's just a random thing that I had conversation on email with some folks, and I've just noticed that there seems to be some. I think I sent a note to Dana and to Drew about this, an email about this. Forgive me if you didn't receive it. I've been having some email difficulties. Notice the transit integration and efficiency study doesn't appear to be linked any longer on the SCTA website. So I found a link to a version of the report, but I just wanted to confirm that that is in fact the correct version of the report. And then also some people were looking for data on ridership statistics, and so that they could make recommendations on effective investments in transit as a VMT reduction measure across the county. And so I was looking for those statistics in that report. I noticed that there is a recommendation from Nelson Nygaard. This was the 2019 study on transit integration efficiency, to standardize data collection so that ridership can be more accurately analyzed for more accurate planning. And so I'm just hoping to get a response to that question so that I can refer that on to the members of the community that asked that of us. Thank you for consideration of my public comment today.
And through the chair, if I could provide a brief response.
Yes.
Thanks. So Tom, I did respond to your email last Thursday, so maybe there was something going on with the email server, but we did get that link fixed, and the document link you sent me was the correct version of the report. So you have the correct version, and it's now able to find it. You're now able to find it on our website. So something happened when our website was updated, but that's fixed now. As far as data is concerned, maybe we could talk offline and talk through exactly what you're looking for and the years you're looking at, because we should have. I'm thinking that we probably have what you're looking for.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Also, thank you, if I may, through the chair, thank you, Tom, for that email too. When we did this website update, a lot of the old documents that were posted had been removed or deleted. So thank you for letting me know about that document link not working.
Okay, great. Just a comment. We used to get members of the public at this committee years ago. I really don't even remember the last time we had an outstanding member of the public that wanted to come and do that. Why do you think that is, Drew or Shauna or Dana, that's been around for a lot of years, Tanya? I mean, it would seem like we'd have more people from the public that were interested in what we're doing. Or maybe that's just a fantasy of mine.
only a fantasy of ours. It's more than it should be. It should be less than fantasy, and it's something that we're trying to address now. We do find that the public is not engaged in a way that we would like to see, but you know, we've heard from members of this group that this is a really boring meeting, and so we need to find ways to make it more relatable, I think, and we are working on that. We are working on an engagement plan that might allow us to engage the public in a different way than we have before.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Yeah. So let's get right to it. Measure M project presentation, Shauna, or unless we have a quorum, Drew, do we want to get to the minutes?
Eris Weaver actually just rose her hand before the end of that, before the start of the item. So I wanted to see if we can acknowledge her. Yeah,
Eris.
Oh, sure. No, I just wanted to kind of talk back to what Shauna was saying, that because I talk a lot to my members and constituents about, you know, about transportation planning and all this stuff that's going on. And it's overwhelming and difficult for a lot of people to even understand and feel like they can have anything, any input that would be meaningful for this meeting in particular. So yeah, it's hard for me to imagine how, you know, just how we would structure or what we could do different that would make this more interesting to people who aren't transportation junkies.
Good comments on the chat line, Tom, of course. All good suggestions. Well, thank you for that, Eris. Let's go ahead, if we could, and move right into City of Petaluma, Measure M project presentation by Shauna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we have the City of Petaluma making a presentation. I apologize. I thought we also had SMART, but I do not see SMART's representatives here. So clearly there was a breakdown in communication. I'm going to take the blame for that. I don't know what happened, but we'll say it was me. But we do have Jeff Stutzman here from the City of Petaluma, who is also giving a presentation, and he will be talking about the Petaluma River Trail. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me this afternoon. Hopefully I can make up for SMART and make this a very exciting presentation. It will be quick. I just have a quick PowerPoint just to give you an update.
Zoom meeting. Mute, currently unmuted, Alt plus a button.
Hold on one sec. Darn bar is right in the middle where. All right. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So Petaluma River Trail. Just to give you a little bit of background, there was a couple phases definitely prior to me. So this has been an ongoing project for a while now, but it's really kind of completing the kind of Lynch Creek Trail from where I left off at Lakeville Street, right up here, and connecting it to East Washington Street. I would say the hardest challenge was probably the first phase of getting the connection over Lakeville Street and the new ped bridge that brought it over to the North Water Street side. And then that part was constructed and completed, leaving this gap in blue that we're current phase that we're working on right now. And that phase really got held up because of right-of-way issues. North Water Street's just an old part of town, so all the right-of-way kind of extended over to the river. Some people weren't willing to grant the city easements over that, and it was just kind of somewhat of a mess to try to get that piece to move forward. None of the pieces really fell into place. So as we were working through this project, I think I've talked about this before, but we, as a development came in for the North Water Street development for the City of Petaluma, came an opportunity to get this path constructed. So North Water Street is a development project by the Spanos Group where they're putting in apartments. They reconstructed Water Street and Oak Street for new traffic signal added. And as part of that project, we conditioned the river trail as a part of that because it made more sense for the developer to do it because they were getting all the right of way for the new roadway, dedicating it to the city. And they had all the construction equipment and people mobilized there to do a more efficient job than it would be for us to do it. So they did this piece, and I think over the last probably 15 months, they've been out there doing the apartments, doing it. So we're at that point now where I'll go move out to that in a sec, but we're almost there to the point of the project is complete. So just in the photos, this is the section in blue is what the developer installed for the city as part of our condition. So I'll show you some of the photos. I will reference the pedestrian bridge, which is right here, that crosses over the Petaluma River. And I'll also reference East Washington, just so you guys can have kind of a sense of where you are in these photos. So this is the completed path as it heads looking north towards that Petaluma bridge, the pedestrian bridge going over the Petaluma River with the feed mill to your right. The city has a pump station right here. This is where our sewage gets pumped across the river. And then this is also looking north, but stepping back farther towards you're kind of at East Washington looking north. Sidewalk has been completed. The lacking elements still are just the continuation of this handrail, which the developer is still working on. Here's a photo looking south of the work. Kind of see this is where the handrail was. So they completed this segment. Just to know, this segment down here was a kind of a challenging one because city needed to expand our lease agreement with state lands. So we completed that piece. Another reason why another element of why this project, although it was just a simple sidewalk project with small retaining walls, how it could kind of get complicated with right-of-way needs. And then this is, again, same photo as before, step back a little bit, looking south towards East Washington Street, showing you some of the improvements. And again, improvements are almost there, but we still got work ahead of ourselves. We got the handrail to install along the pathway. We got all the crosswalk signs for the pedestrians and the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. But it gives you a good sense of the whole sidewalk has been installed, just some minor elements still left to do to kind of close this project out. So that's my presentation. If you guys have any questions, let me know. But again, this is really with this last element of the river trail, it basically connects Lynch Creek Trail, which is kind of starts on the east side of town, heads under Highway 101, crosses over Lakeville Street, and now it's connected into East Washington, where now you have access to transit station, you have access to Petaluma Boulevard South via Water Street, which is under construction, will have a class 4 bike lane. So it kind of is that missing gap that we have in town, kind of tying everything together.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Is there, I believe in a previous presentation, we talked about the development on the south side of East Washington Street. And does that come in on the other side of the river from what I'm looking south right here on your river, on that last picture that we were on, correct?
Yeah, this photo you were looking at was probably where this arrow was looking towards East Washington.
Yeah, and where does the south come in at Water Street right there? So it's not offset by it's directly across. And my question is, did you guys have to put any pedestrian crossing with the blinking light crosswalks and that sort of thing in to handle that? How are you handling the people crossing from Water Street up to the from south to north and north to south across East Washington Street?
Currently, there is no plans right now for a crossing East Washington. I think from a traffic engineering perspective, trying to cross East Washington at that point is probably not the best bet unless you install like a signal or a hawk or some sort of thing that could stop the traffic, because it is a high volume roadway. It is 4 lanes. But obviously the close proximity to East Washington Petaluma Boulevard, really similar to our other ones where it's a little offset. It may not be the most efficient thing. The safest thing is for people to go up to the intersection and use the crossing to come back down. Maybe in the future there might be plans to create some type of crossing there, but right now there's not. I think there are other opportunities available that we could look at too in the future, where Copeland Street, the city has right away, so that may be another connection to say Transit Mall or the smart station. So there are a lot of opportunities with Lynch Creek, but Lynch Creek, as well as active transportation in the city of Petaluma, is a hot topic. So there's a lot of great activity going on with a lot of these projects.
There is the
Thank
there
you
is
for
the
that.
flashing beacon just of the, yeah, exactly. So if if you wanted to cross and you were going to downtown, then you'd go up to Petaluma Boulevard. But if you were going, say, to the transit station, you'd just get across the river and then take that flashing beacon that would take you across the street to the transit mall and to the smart station.
Right. Big
So
improvement.
It's not a direct link right at the end of Water Street, but it is absolutely doable. It is a connection.
Yeah, nice to see that area getting cleaned up and developed and so forth, Jeff. Nice job on that stuff.
Yeah, no, the project should be done by the end of the year, and I think it's gonna just be amazing. So they're working on turning on the signal, and paving's done, striping's done. So it's a big improvement for what it used to be.
Yeah. Eris, I think, did you have your hand up for another comment or a comment on this?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I wrote this a couple times last week, and two kind of questions / comments. One is the photos make this look like it's more finished than it feels like on the ground, because there's still a chunk of street that's part of the, leads into the construction of the apartment. I mean, one could still get through and get to the bridge. But that section is not shown in your photo unless it was finished in the last week. The other thing that I'm always finding lacking is wayfinding. If you're just downtown and you do not know that this is there, you're not going to find it, right? Because that crossing on Water Street, half a block from the boulevard, nothing there says anything about come here to get to the trail. And if you're already there, if you're on the boulevard, there's nothing from either the boulevard or Washington Street that give you any indication that just, a little ways away, you can get on this great trail that goes all the way across town. So I'm really hoping that this project isn't considered complete until there's some wayfinding added.
I guess to answer your first question, this is still an active construction site. It's not that it's completed or done. They still have a lot of work ahead of themselves, but the pathway itself is in, and there's still a lot of work ahead of them. But looking at the pictures, like, you can see that it's installed. But again, they still need to clean up the site. They still need to get CFOs for the apartments. They still have utilities and punch list items. So they have work ahead of themselves as well before we even get close to calling it complete. As far as wayfinding, I would have to double check the conditions of approval. I don't know if that was an original condition as part of this project. One thing that I will say is that the city has done a wayfinding study similar to what not Roner Park, but Katati has done, where they did with, I'm forgetting the firm that they use, but we have the same firm on staff who's done a wayfinding study, and we are in the process of kind of confirming that study. It's got somewhat of approval from council and the Bicycle Advisory Committee. So moving forward, the city of Petaluma does have kind of like a quote unquote standardized wayfinding program. As developments come through, we've been utilizing that program. So like PEPS is starting to use it, even though they have very minimal signage. We're going to start using it when we turn off of Petaluma Boulevard south of Road Diet and turn it into the Bike Boulevard on 5th. North River Apartments is going to implement it for their wayfinding there. So as we move forward, the consistency will start to be there. And then Ken is very involved with all Lynch Creek. Our traffic engineer is very involved with all the work on Lynch Creek Trail. So he's starting to implement some of that wayfinding. It's just that this initial wayfinding program that we created was really a start of a simple pilot to just kind of see how it would go. And it's turned into this monster beast that everybody has loved and wanted. So it's growing exponentially as we start implementing and moving it forward. So there may not be something right away, I guess is what I'm telling you, but that doesn't mean there won't be anything in the near future either. Because you're right, we are lacking it, but I think we know that there is a need for it, and we're working on it.
It just feels like it ought to be, you know, you wouldn't build a road or repave a road without putting the stripes and the signs. So why do we keep building bike paths without putting the signs? Right, I mean, Lynch Creek Trail's been there for a really long time now, and it's still hard for people to find. I even got on a wrong turn on it the other day, and I even know where the hell it is. So I would just like that to get embraced in the planning and engineering mindset, that just like you wouldn't build a street without signs, you need to not call the paths finished until you've got the signs too.
Not to say that it's right, but I mean, the difference between a roadway and the striping and signage is usually regulatory and a requirement by state law, versus guidance sign is not necessarily regulatory, even though it is a needed item. So I'm not saying here telling you that it's not needed. I'm absolutely in full agreement that it is, and we are kind of working towards it. I don't know why this project necessarily wasn't conditioned for it. Some projects are, some projects aren't. It just depends who's looking at and who's reviewing it, unfortunately. But I think as we start to promote active transportation in the city and move that forward, that we'll start implementing that wayfinding kind of program to get it, because I think we all know that it is needed.
I have a question for you.
Tom Conlon has his hand up. If Eris's question was, are you done, Eris?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. And Jeff, appreciate the update here. I asked a question in the chat, and maybe I'm just misremembering, but I thought I recall seeing a 3D virtual fly-through of this segment that had a clearly demarcated class 2 bike lane in it. Does that ring any bells, or am I just making that up?
It may have been. I think the original video, and I probably showed it to you, it was kind of a rendering video that was done as part of probably the sparse middle, kind of the initial phases when the project was going through its entitlement phases for this project. But as you can see, it's really, yeah, the approach and design was a class 1 path that connected Washington to Lakeville, and then the on-street is a class 3. So I don't believe that there was an on-street class 2. There's just definitely not the right way to do it. I mean, Water Street is tight. You can see that this section that has the barricades is because there's a 3-4 foot retaining wall along the river right here that to be able to make that class 1 enough width versus just a narrow.
Okay, so I guess maybe I completely misunderstood your presentation, and that is that the sidewalk I see to the right, it's allowed to ride a bicycle up there, and in fact, it's recommended.
Yeah, it's kind of like unfortunately, like a quasi class 1 path.
All right, so that just you know, even here in a presentation, somebody who's been paying attention to this for a couple of years, Eris couldn't find it, and I'm looking at the picture thinking, I'm a bicycle rider. I see the Sharrow painted in the center of the road. I'm supposed to ride my bike over there. That's how I just interpreted this, even though you were telling me that there was a multi-use path up on that raised, you know, sidewalk. The reason I bring it up is some of us are familiar with riding in urban areas where there are prohibitions on riding on sidewalks. And so, you know, we're trying to do the right thing, and you know, obviously some people are going to be up there. So yeah, that's just feedback on as you kind of dial this in and get it to be most useful. So thanks for consideration of those comments.
Thank you.
And when I rode through there, I thought that was a sidewalk and not for riding, and I rode in the street where the Sharrows are. And downtown Petaluma has a ban on riding bicycles on sidewalks. So what you're saying, Jeff, is very confusing.
You cut out a little bit, Eris. Is very what?
Confusing. Because you're telling me that that's a class 1 path with the sidewalk, but then I see class 3 Sharrow's in the street, and downtown Petaluma prohibits riding on the sidewalk. So to the average cyclist who knows what those signs mean would not think that that sidewalk is where you're supposed to ride, that the street is where you're supposed to ride.
Understood. I'll talk with Ken, our traffic engineer, and see if there's any particular signage that would go on a class 1 path like this to denote that it's the class 1.
Jeff, what are the 2 curbed areas that we see that have the orange fencing around them? Are
Those are like tree islands. So that was a part of the original design. So between each of them, there's probably one just to the bottom of this photo that you don't see, but it's basically, I believe, 44 feet between each one. So it would handle 2 parking stalls. And then we're obviously no trees are in there yet because we are in a drought moratorium. So we can't be doing any planting unless it's mitigated.
Left for N, not responding right for N.
I
Meeting.
think we're hearing some background noise. I'm not sure where it's from. Anyways, Tom has his hand up. Tom Banning.
Hi, just to follow on with the writing on the sidewalk comment from Eris, where this ends at Washington Boulevard, will there be signage advising cyclists that they should dismount to go one direction to Petaluma Boulevard or the other direction eastbound to this crosswalk? Because otherwise people are going to be on the sidewalk or attempting to cross illegally and dangerously. That's all.
Thank you. We will look at that.
Jeff, what is the timeline for getting to 100% on this so that it's completely in use? What are we looking at?
I would comfortably say by the end of the year, it's probably going to be less than that. I don't exactly know what the status is on the building permit and them getting COs. So that's part of it. And then there's, depending on the handrail, how that plays out. It's, as you can see, it's a kind of creative handrail, and the material that is acquired for it is kind of hard to get. So it may take some time to acquire the material and fabricate it, but
Chat function.
I'm hoping by the end of the year.
Gina, could I ask you to mute your microphone? I think it's yours that we're getting the background noise from. Maybe not. Sorry about that, Jeff.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the end of the year. I mean, I think they'll probably have, the developer has stricter timelines than that, because they want to obviously get out and get people moved in. So.
And how does that relate to the other segments like the South Side and Lynch and so forth? Are they more complete than that? Are they waiting for something to complete?
This segment of River Trail, the blue line, is the segment that is the final phase of the River Trail Measure M funding for this project. So we basically essentially will be completed with this segment. This segment right here that heads up to Lakeville was previously completed. And obviously the Lynch Creek Trail is under works, I guess, to harden portions of it. But as far as the Measure M, it's this piece that's in question right now. Or not in question, but
and again, I'm only asking to kind of coordinate with the comments by Tom and Eris about the signage and so forth, because I would find that kind of confusing as well. But
and I think a part of it kind of comes down to, I prefer to talk with Ken, who's the traffic engineer, who's much more involved with the Lynch Creek Trail, because again, when we start looking at just segment by segment, I think we need to kind of look at it as a whole. So I think that's what we need to do, is look at it kind of from a higher elevation view of the whole program and looking at it from Lynch Creek, from say McDowell down to East Washington, so we can get all the appropriate signage for the trail instead of piecemealing it. And I know he's involved and he's working on that. I just don't know that. And I'll also look into what wayfinding, if any, is involved with the development, because obviously we can't condition the developer to install something that isn't conditioned or as part of the plan. But it's obviously from this group, it is something that is needed. So we'll look at it.
Yeah, not trying to rip or be critical or anything, but is the other segments of the same combined class one, kind of a modified class one bike trail, is like where you're putting pedestrian strollers and skateboards and bikes and dogs all on the same raised concrete path?
Yeah, I think the only thing different about this one is this one's hardened. A lot of Lynch Creek Trail is not hardened yet. We are in the process of doing it. Like the Lakeville to Edith section will be done with the river, like a development name, but the development on Madison. So that section will be done. I know we have a CIP project for the next segment. So we are tackling trying to harden Lynch Creek Trail. So it is, if you look at it as a whole, it's somewhat of a piecemeal project because it jumps from ownership all over the place, that it's not a simple process. But for the city, the ultimate goal is to have Lynch Creek Trail hardened in concrete, so it's a good crosstown connector for bike and ped, used by strollers, walkers, bikers, skateboarders, everybody. And I think, again, going back to kind of the inconsistency of it being hardened kind of goes to the wayfinding, that it's, until more recently, I think Lynch Creek Trail is getting a lot more notice to because everybody uses it. It's definitely a good source in town for active transportation, because we lack that crosstown connector for bike and ped that the city is putting a lot more attention and effort into Lynch Creek itself.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And Tom, is that an old hand or a new hand?
It's a new quick hand, and through Chair Bly, I was just going to ask, since we have raised a number of issues here, Jeff has committed to bringing a bunch of things back, just to make sure that there's time in our next agenda somehow to get some of these questions resolved as we intend to do.
Duly noted. Drew and Shauna, can we arrange that next meeting or the meeting after, depending on how quick Jeff can free his schedule up to get back to us?
I have it noted. I'll put it on the draft agenda that I keep here for the next one.
Yeah, good point, Tom. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments from anybody?
Mr. Chair, just a point
Yes,
of
sir. Yes, ma'am.
clarification. Is it okay if Jeff weren't available, if he were to provide answers to your comments and we could just give that presentation and not have Jeff attend? Is that an acceptable option?
Acceptable to me. I just wanted to be sure we just didn't forget about it. That's my main objective. Thank you.
We are a very focused group, Shauna. So I would say yes, but if we have questions that are coming from his answers, then we may have to, revisit it and so forth. But yeah, of course. Let's make it easy. Jeff's got plenty on his plate. We appreciate you, Jeff.
We actually have Petaluma River Trail shown as July 25th. So
oh boy.
scheduled to come back next month anyway.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be done, but we can have him as the presentation and it'll be just fine.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Jeff.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. And we have, did we say that Joanne Parker is not here, or she is here?
They're not here. I've corresponded with them since the meeting began. They will show up at the transit operators presentation schedule, which is scheduled in September.
Okay. All right, Shauna, I think we're on to any I guess we should save our comments for the sake of not ripping Petaluma when they're not here, but I Am I the only one that feels a little bit baited and switched on this from a Citizens Advisory Committee? Because this is not exactly what we had presented to us in the past. Not that we're the ones that are signing on the dotted line, but it does seem like this is very disjointed to me. And I think we drew that out of this presentation, but I'm not real happy with
I
it.
think in Petaluma's defense, I think what happens is they use graphics that are that are created by landscape architects and that sort of thing that are always pretty and look delightful, but aren't necessarily reflective of reality when we get right down to what's actually going in. So I would say that we definitely needed clarification. So we're happy to bring that
Okay.
back.
Thank you.
I would just add there, if I may, that, all these issues that the committee's brought up today, I think were forecast in the previous presentations as concerns of this committee. So the fact that they weren't prepared to respond to those concerns is a kind of a flag to me. And I want this committee to be effective, and I want there to be good back and forth with the projects that we're funding. And I'm not sure how to do that. So that's really the spirit of why I think we all participate on this committee. And so I look forward to that improving over time.
I agree wholeheartedly, not to beat a dead horse, but I do think we deserved a little different. Eris, you have the final say in this?
Yeah, one of the things that I hear a lot that I heard Jeff struggling with is what the classifications of bike facilities are. So he kept saying that this was going to be a class 1 or that this is a class 1, and we pointed out the Sharrows, on the street is a class 3, and even the sidewalk, a sidewalk next to a street is not a class 1. Right? There is nothing about that is class 1. But I've even been in presentations in other jurisdictions where planners had a whole display board of different bike facilities, and I went along and said, that's not a class 2, that's a 1, or that's not a 3, that's a 2, or whatever. So they're for some reason it seems that folks who aren't bike geeks don't always have a clear grasp on what those classifications mean. There was just an editorial in the Sonoma Index Tribune about some bike facilities in the Sonoma Valley, and they kept saying bike lane about something that is actually planned to be a class 1 bike, path. So there's just a lot of confusion in the language and what people have in their head when somebody uses certain words that may or may not be accurate.
Fair enough. All right. I think our position is pretty solid, unified on this one anyways. All right, let's move on to Measure M annual presentation schedule. Shauna, you're up again.
There. As we do each year, we develop a presentation schedule so that everyone involved has some sort of notice, and we can try to prevent these little snafus that happen, like what is happening with SMART right now, where they are not here. But we bring that presentation schedule to the technical advisory committee, they approve it, and then we try to give them about 2 weeks notice where we say, hey, just a reminder, you're on deck to present to the Citizens Advisory Committee. So we do the same for the Citizens Advisory Committee. We bring you the schedule and we ask if there is anything else that you want to hear about, or if there is something that you want to hear about sooner, because like with Jeff, you wanted answers that he didn't have, so you're asking him to come back. I don't know why I put them on the schedule for July, because this should have been it should have been done. But it's fortuitous that we were planning on having him back anyway. So again in July. With that, the schedule is included in your agenda packet. And let me just go over it real quickly since I'm not sharing screen. But essentially it has Petaluma River Trail in July. We would have the Bicycle Coalition come and talk to us in August about both the countywide Safe Routes to Schools program and Bike Month. And then in September, we have all of the transit operators. So we will include SMART in that presentation as well. And then we have an open month in October. Nothing is scheduled currently, but we can always use that if we need to for a presentation that needs to be rescheduled if necessary. We have Highway 116, 121 intersection improvements in November, along with and then, I'm sorry, not with anything. And then there is a typo in your staff report. I apologize about that. But Hearn is shown. Oh no, that's right. It is that way because SCTA is partnering with the city of Santa Rosa to help deliver Hearn. So I have that shown as on that same day in November. And then there is no meeting in December. In February, we would bring you the Pengrove improvements and all of the other county projects, Airport, Arnold Drive bike lanes, Forestville, Mark West Springs Road. And then in March, we have the rest of the Santa Rosa projects, the Fulton Avenue improvements, Santa Rosa Creek Trail, Farmers Lane extension. And then in April, we have the county regional parks presenting on Central Sonoma Valley Trail, Sonoma Shellville Trail, and Bodega Bay. And then SMART again, or right now, SMART is showing in June of next year as well, but we might be able to skip that one if we include them with the transit operators. Take any questions or comments or suggestions.
You've got Fulton Road out there in March of 23, Shauna. Kind of where will that construction be by that point?
It should be well into construction, but I believe it is 2 construction seasons. So we'll get a good update on what's been accomplished.
Thank you. And a quick question just on Hearn, because I've been dealing with the city of Santa Rosa and been told they're $9 million short. Is that the same number that is rattling around your hallways over there?
Go back and forth. There will be a discussion about funding opportunities, or not opportunities, but the funding plan is one of the next items. And so I would like to press pause on that, and we can talk about that then, if you like.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Shauna, if I may.
Yeah, please.
I just noticed that you've got no meeting in December and then no presentation in January.
That's correct.
That's intentional. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. It should also show as no meeting in or open in January. That's another one where we could reschedule if we had to.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts, Shauna. Thanks for trying to keep us all on the same page here. Appreciate it. All right, we ready for the great James Cameron to regale us with financial numbers?
Unfortunately, James is in Sacramento today, so I'll be pitching.
David, you got the duty. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry. So in your packet, we have our monthly financial updates for Measure M. If you have any questions, just let me know and I'll pass it along to James. We do plan to have an update next month from HDL on our financial forecasting, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and pass along the ones I don't know the answer to James.
This is where I really miss Dennis. He used to go over this with a fine tooth comb. So who's our substitute Dennis this week to give David a question he can't answer? We stumped David today. I have to admit, I haven't looked over it in enough detail to ask anything, David, so appreciate you presenting it to us. Anybody have any comments or questions on the financials? Oh, Steve does. Thank you.
Well, my question is a little broader than our financials, I'm afraid. it looks like inflation is going to be a substantial issue over the next 2 or 3 years and maybe more. What is that going to do to our process?
So when it comes to Measure M, we forecast both inflationary growth and real growth, and our consultants at HDL do a good job of breaking that apart. I think with the increase in inflation over the last couple of quarters, that's something we're going to be looking at more closely as we move forward and get ready to do our sales tax projections for the first bill of Sonoma strategic plan, which we'll be working on by the end of 2023, getting that done then. And also the next update to the Measure M strategic implementation plan, which we'll probably do right after we finish that Go Sonoma Street plan. So it's something we're always keeping an eye on. It is becoming an issue for construction costs and for not only the prices for materials like asphalt due to oil prices, but also things are really kind of all over the place. Where wood was really expensive last year, now it's down. Pipe is getting more expensive. So we're constantly monitoring this, and it's something that we're having as a standing item now with the technical advisory committee to monitor the bid pricing and the inflation of construction costs. So something we're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, to that end, Steve, I remember reading something, and I don't think it was in California, but there was a project that literally doubled from what their estimate was. And it was a major project. It was tens of millions, if not more. And it doubled from the engineer's estimate to when it got put out to bid recently. So we're in the middle of it, and I don't think there's any easy answers here. So I think we got to just buckle up and hope we can get through it with proper forecasting and so forth. As a comment to that, David, what do you guys assume for an inflation rate? Is there a particular number that you guys plug into with your consultants into the matrix?
I'd have to look into that closer. I know our projection in the street plan the board just approved was a 3% growth rate. And I think of that might have been 2% inflation, 1% actual growth. But as we've seen, inflation this year is probably more 4 or 5 times at least of that. So we're gonna have to probably revisit that number soon.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any other questions. We are on to David and Shauna for the funding program draft staff recommendations, please. Shauna and David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully I unmuted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. So now, Drew, am I doing the right one?
Not yet. Almost. One more step on the display. That you
Okay. So now I'm going to swap on. Where is it again? Under
It's
more?
on the screen you're sharing.
On
where
this
your mouse is.
Sorry?
On the screen you're sharing where your mouse is, or at least you see your cursor right here. Hopefully it's not stuck. Oh wait, that's my cursor. I'm sorry. So up on the screen, display settings. It's on this.
Oh, there it is. Sorry, got it. Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Perfect.
Here we go again. So this is the presentation of our draft staff recommendations for the SCTA funding program cycle 1. So as you all likely recall, SCTA started this process about a year ago with a call for the top 5 priority projects from each jurisdiction. In response to that call, we received 65 applications. Total requested funds in those applications was more than $220 million for about $62.5 million in available funding. Also, given the timing of some of the funding sources, SCTA needed to program some of the projects early with State Transportation Improvement Program funds and Local Partnership Program funds. That money went to the 4 listed projects here. Those were in Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, the county, and then Santa Rosa City Bus. In addition to the STIP and LPP programming, that's State Transportation Improvement Program and Local Partnership Program funding, that was done early, I wanted to review the other most recent programming that was done by SCTA. That was the Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program, which was offered by MTC to spend some of the last One Bay Area Grant Cycle 2 funds. 6 jurisdictions were selected in Sonoma County to receive that funding. The funds were intended for projects that were ready to go and quickly deliverable. Additionally, the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program was seeking applications earlier than when SCTA anticipated proposing projects for the One Bay Area Cycle 3 grant program. So SCTA partnered with the transit agencies to submit several of the projects that had been submitted for funding program as a TIRCIP grant application. That's Transit and Intercity Rail Program, totaling more than $24 million. Awards are supposed to be announced this month, but as of today, we haven't yet heard. So with that background, that brings us to the process that SCTA went through to evaluate the remaining projects that had been submitted for the SCTA funding program Cycle 1. All of the projects were evaluated by staff and received a consensus score using criteria that were recommended by both the technical and citizens advisory committees and approved by the SCTA board. So you'll likely recall that we went through that process of showing you the evaluation criteria that we had developed. The evaluation criteria address established goals of the Plan Bay Area and the Comprehensive Transportation Plan, as well as Go Sonoma. They include benefits to equity priority communities, potential mode shift, safety, community engagement, emissions reduction, and project readiness, among others. The staff's initial approach was to rank each project in order of its raw score. We then used a cutoff score of 95 points. The total funding requested of projects that fell into that category was $101.2 million, which was nearly double the available funding. You can find those projects listed in Table 2 in your agenda packet. Staff also looked at a second scenario where we again selected the projects with a score of 95 or above, but excluded all the transit projects since we were anticipating that TIRCIP grant award. This approach would disproportionately benefit some jurisdictions over others and would have difficulty meeting all of the SCTA and regional goals and performance targets. One of the projects on that list has already gone out to bid as well, so that one was removed. You can see those projects listed in Table 3 of your agenda packet. Third scenario selected the highest scoring project from each jurisdiction, but this approach would also disproportionately favor some jurisdictions over others, and it would have been challenging to program given the levels of certain funding sources. That scenario is shown in Table 4 of the agenda packet. That leads us to the actual staff recommendation, and this is where I turn it over to David.
Thank you, Shauna. So the staff recommendation is based on that third scenario that Shauna described, but we adjusted for a number of factors, including geographic equity to ensure that all areas of the county benefit from this funding. Looking at the eligibility for certain funding sources, only some of the projects are eligible for certain funds, such as the Rohnert Park mitigation fees that SCTA administers. And also looking at what are those SCTA and MTC regional goals and performance measures that we have to try to meet. For example, looking at pavement condition is something that does not score very well in our scoring system, but is a critical need throughout the county. So we feel that this staff recommendation as shown in Table 5 provides a balanced program of projects and allows for a multimodal investment approach that will benefit the entire region. I should note that this recommendation does not include funding for the Smart Windsor extension or the Petaluma North Station, because we are assuming they are going to be funded through other funding sources that Smart is pursuing after. So this is shown in Table 5. We do have a slightly modified recommendation that's shown on the next slide. If the TIRSIP grant for some reason is not awarded to SCTA, we feel like we do need to advance some of those critical transit projects. And so this would fund the highest scoring zero emission bus replacement projects for Petaluma Transit, Santa Rosa City Bus, and Sonoma County Transit at the expense of 2 pavement projects, one in Santa Rosa, one in the town of Windsor, and a transit expansion project in the city of Petaluma. So this is shown in table 6. And on the next couple of slides, we have summaries of all of the projects and the recommendations. And this first slide is the recommendation, assuming that we do get the TIRSIP grant. This would fund projects in all of the jurisdictions, including Cloverdale, Cotati, Healdsburg, Petaluma, Roanoke Park, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, City of Sonoma, Sonoma County, Windsor, the transit expansion project for Petaluma Transit, and also a segment of SMART's pathway between the airport station and the Santa Rosa North Station. I should note that on some of these projects, we're recommending partial funding and less than the amount that the cities or the sponsors requested due to the limited funds we had available. And on the next slide, we show the very slightly modified recommendation that drops the 2 pavement projects and the transit expansion project, as I mentioned, in favor of the 3 bus replacement projects. And as Sean mentioned, we're hoping to hear back on this Transit and Interstate Rail Capital Program grant application this week. We are waiting to hear back and hope to have an answer soon on what the potential award SCTA from that program will be, so we can move forward with our recommendation to the board. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sean.
David. So with that, staff is requesting feedback from the Citizens Advisory Committee on the draft recommendations. We do want to note that the recommendations may change between now and the final programming, depending on the TIRSIP outcome that David just mentioned. We have also asked that the projects determined to be most suitable for OBAG 3, that's One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3, which are shown in table 5 with a yes in the OBAG suitable column, complete and submit an MTC OBAG 3 application to SCTA by July 18th. So we've met with the TAC already, and we've requested that several of those project sponsors submit the actual MTC application that we received from MTC that will be required in order to nominate projects in the One Bay Area grant. And just for your reference, this is a quick list of the projects that have been asked for OBAG 3 applications to be submitted. Being on this list and submitting an OBAG 3 application does not, however, guarantee the project will be submitted to MTC, nor guarantee that it will receive federal funding. I would be happy to take any questions. That ends our presentation.
I have a question and a comment. I don't know if anybody else was having trouble keeping up with that wealth of information, but I sure as hell was. You guys did a good job. That's a lot of information. Are you asking for our advisory committee to make recommendations based on this list today?
Happy to take feedback from the committee. We are looking to present this same information to the board in July. So we will be, as David mentioned, waiting to hear about the TIRSIP grant. And then if that transit and intercity rail grant program is successful, then we'll get $24 million from that. And that will fund several of our high profile transit projects. And that being the case, then we would have more funding available to do the rest of the program. That's what we showed you in table 5. In table 6, in case we don't get the TIRSIP grant, those are the ones that we're saying we're putting forward. And that swaps out those 2 projects that David talked about that are pavement projects and adds a couple of other transit projects so that we get that balance of modes that we feel is the most appropriate.
And I see you, Steve, a quick follow-up, if I could ask. The one project you said that was already out to bid, was that the McDowell, the big one? And I understand they pulled those bids. It's now rebidding. So it was out to bid. Now it's gonna go again. So we'll keep our fingers crossed as to what the number comes in at. Steve, you had your hand up first. Bertlebaugh.
Yeah, I want to say that having watched the way you've allocated these over the years, I have a lot of confidence in the work you're doing. The two questions I have is, again, how is inflation going to affect all of this? Because I really think it's going to be a very robust inflation for the next couple of years. And the other one is, the legislature is contemplating putting a lot more money into the active transportation program. And I'm wondering if we're going to be able to take full advantage of that with all of this.
I certainly hope so. I'm going to address that second question first, and that is, we are hoping that the projects that don't get funded through this program we're going to work with the project sponsors to try to make sure that those other programs that come up are that all of the priority projects that we had submitted to us are well suited and ready to go when those other funding programs become available. So more money comes available in ATP, then we're hoping that we will work with those project sponsors to move those other projects forward.
Thank you.
And then inflation, you want to address inflation, David?
Yeah, real quick, I should note one of the Petaluma applications for the river trail, they did submit that for the active transportation program this cycle. So we're hopeful they'll get funding from that program. For inflation, we ask that our project sponsors escalate their costs out to the year that they expect to deliver their project. That's always something very challenging to do because unexpected things like this current situation we're in worldwide happen without anyone's crystal ball occurring. So I think if that happens, people may have to come back and ask for more money through other funding sources such as ATP or other discretionary funding programs. And that's something that we're struggle with because a lot of times we cannot fund cost increases due to the limited amount of funding we have. So it's something that we're gonna have to keep a close eye on.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Shauna. This is, I agree with John. This is a lot of material. I did gloss over it, and I wanted to ask a couple of things. One, if you could just retell us the steps of the recommendation occurring at the board versus when you're expecting the TIRCP grant to be funded. It sounds like what you're recommending is a conditional action by the board to basically have two plans in place, which would result in two different sets of projects being funded. And I want to be sure I'm clear on that. And if that's the case, what is the cost of delaying perhaps until we get the TIRCP grant so that the board has that information in front of it? I have a second question, but if you want to answer that first.
And I apologize. I apparently just rode right through the schedule, which I did not talk about, and that may help a little bit. So hopefully I'm sharing the right screen again, and you guys can see the slide that shows SCTA funding program schedule.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me just go through that real quick, Tom, and then we can answer any questions that you might still have. So we're in June right now. We're in the end of June. So that's when we are asking for feedback from the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee. Early in July, we will be asking for, and we also included the Technical Advisory Committee in June, the Transit Technical Advisory Committee. I'm sure I hit all of those T's. In July, we'll be going to the CAAC, which is the Climate Action Advisory Committee, and also to the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. But in July, we will be taking the draft funding program recommendations to the board, where we will also be asking for feedback from the board. We will not actually be taking action on on the program because it's not ready yet. We have to get all of this information. We still have to do all of our engagement with the public. So there's a lot that still has to happen. Right now, we're just saying, this is our initial take, and we'd really like your feedback on all of it because there's a lot to consider. And the TIRCIP grant is supposed to be announced in June, and we won't be making our recommendation to the board until July 11th. So we hope that we will have that information before we go to the board. So we will go to the board in July. Then in August, after we've taken all that feedback from all of the advisory committees and any public engagement that we do, which we are planning to do, we'll be going out to community-based organizations, and we'll be going out to the federally recognized tribes and trying to make sure that we're engaging in ways that we haven't traditionally done before, going to them instead of asking them to come to us, you know, various different ways of meeting either in person or virtually so that it makes it easier for us to get feedback from the public. Then we'll synthesize all of that information and we will take a final draft recommendation to the board in September. But in August, all of the advisory committees will get another bite at the apple. That's where we'll be asking for you guys to support our recommendation. And then at the end of September, after the board has made their decision, then we will submit those projects that we feel are good candidates for the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 funding. That is federal money, so we're not recommending that all of the projects that came in get it, and we're not even recommending all the projects that are on our list get it, because not everybody is set up for federal funding. It's a lot harder than it used to be, and it's not worth it for some of the jurisdictions to even go through that process. So we're proposing that they receive other funding sources instead, state funding or Go Sonoma funding, that kind of thing. So in September, we will provide the applications for those projects that we feel are good candidates for federal funding. And then from October to December, MTC will make their own evaluations and come up with their own recommendations, because all of the projects that we submit to MTC are competitive projects. It's a competitive program, so we are not guaranteed any funding through MTC. We are given a target, and we expect that we will probably get close to that target, but none of it is guaranteed, and it has to be competitive. So in December, MTC staff will give us their recommendations for that federal program, and then in January, the commission will act to approve that program. After the commission takes action in January, MTC will receive those formal applications in the form of the tip, but more importantly, SCTA will regroup, see what's getting funded and what isn't, and then we will have a final recommendation for our program, because we might need to adjust based on what does and doesn't get funding through MTC, what we are, you know, the amounts of money and what is actually getting funded for the SCTA funding program, cycle 1. That final action will happen in February of 2023. Does that clear it up?
Thank you, Shauna. That's such a much better and more in detail explanation. So
Yeah,
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I would just add that Steve Bertelbaugh said it earlier, but that was helpful for us.
Yeah.
We really can trust that you have this well in hand. So thank you for that. My follow-up question had to do, let's see if I can remember it. Oh, just with being able to access the detailed scoring sheets for each of the projects. Where would I find those? I noticed there were links in some of those tables, but I haven't tried to click on one.
The links will take you to the application itself. We haven't posted the scoring yet. We hadn't posted the scoring yet. I'll stop there.
Very well. Because I was curious, you know, from both a processual perspective as well as what looks to me kind of surprising that the TIRCP projects seem to be so different. And that only if if the RCP doesn't come in, many of the projects that are on that list would not get funding because they're not meeting the other local priorities. So I was kind of curious to just understand how the scoring affected that difference in lists and whether we might need to address that in the coming months. So if that's going to be made available to us, I'd like to be able to see that scoring, and if that purpose.
So we're still working that out, but I don't see, I imagine that they will be posted eventually, but I'm not sure that we will do it immediately because we're still shopping everything around and trying to get input on our recommended list. We are providing the scores to the project sponsors if they ask for them so that they can know how they did and what portions of their applications we felt were strong and which ones we thought maybe needed some work.
Thank you, Tom. And
I want to talk about
Mosa's got his hand up, Shauna. I don't know if you want, is it okay if he jumps in before you go on?
I was actually just going to try to address if the projects don't get the TIRCIP grant, but I think David might be better suited to do that. I think the intent is to apply again.
So there is some talk with the governor and the legislature that there may be a potential transportation augmentation from the state budget surplus that would allow another TIRCIP call for projects this fall. I believe the governor has come to some kind of arrangement with the legislature over kind of a rebate to families for inflation costs, but I'm not sure if that includes the larger transportation package that's been kind of mulled over the last 2 years. And if that does occur, we feel like some of the TIRCIP projects that would not be funded with our recommendation if the TIRCIP grant is now awarded could compete very well for another call for projects this fall. And so we're hopeful that we're going to be very competitive and get this funding, but if not, we think we can apply again and get it.
Excellent. Mosa?
I have just a minor question, Shauna. Did you take into consideration in this funding program the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, the federal $1.2 trillion infrastructure funding?
So MTC is supposed to receive some of that funding, and they are telling us that they haven't had that defined yet. The programs are sort of being defined as we go. Some of them are so new that the federal government is busy developing guidelines for them. And so they're sort of rolling them out a little at a time. And so it's not necessarily as an immediate benefit as we were all hoping for. We were hoping that that was going to happen and then it was going to supplement what we already had for OBAG and there was going to be lots more funding. But that doesn't seem to be the way it's playing out. So we're all trying to sort of be patient and wait for when those programs are announced. And then hopefully with the stable of projects that we now have, we have the highest priority projects from every jurisdiction. We all will have things that are ready to go when those programs become available.
I was attending a presentation last month in DC for the ACT czar, the White House czar. I forgot his name. In fact, to be honest with you, he was saying that 40% of the funding will be competitive, which means any jurisdiction can apply to it. And I see an opportunity here, for our projects to get funded on the top of the formula funding that comes to each state.
Thank you, Mosa and Shauna and Tom, Danny.
Clarification. If a project is successful with OBAG, does that funding usually cover 100%, or does a project ended up with split funding, some from OBAG and some from more local sources?
Generally, the federal program is, it requires an 11.47% match.
And in some cases, for our particular recommendations, we may not have enough federal funding to fully fund the request out of OBAG funds. So we may have, for example, Go Sonoma or another funding source that'll make up the difference.
Okay, thank you.
A quick question, I think, Shauna, did the TAC and the TTA, the transportation group, have comments when they reviewed this? And if they did your list change pursuant to those comments?
They did have comments, and no, our list did not change because we are shopping the same list to all of the advisory committees first. And there were comments that were along the lines of emissions reduction category might disproportionately advantage certain projects over others, and what are we going to do? That everybody needs to use the roads, you know, buses use the roads and bikes use the roads, pedestrians use the roads. So we really need to make sure that we continue to maintain our infrastructure. And I would say that SCTA fully supports that, and we are doing our best to fund projects that include pavement, but are also complete streets projects that we feel are most competitive. This is the wave of the future. I mean, we're not going to get around the fact that the planet is on fire. That's editorializing, though. I apologize.
This is Robler Road, I guess. Mark had to leave. I guess my prayers are with his neighbor. I guess some neighbor got injured or has damaged their property. So I hope everybody's okay over there. Yeah. But anyways, well, thank you for that. I think from my perspective, we're kind of running out of time. I think I got to go the Steve Bertelbaugh route and just trust you guys as we have been for years. And we do get a second bite at the apple. So we'll look at this a little more in August. For me personally, I make a motion that we accept and support your recommendations as presented.
I'll second that.
And I would like to point you to the SCTA website that does include all of the applications that we received. So you can click the link on the SCTA funding program page of the list of projects, and that will take you to a number of spreadsheets that have links in them that will take you to each individual application. Should anybody, if you want to review any of these projects in further detail.
Well, and not to put you on the spot for something you may not have control over, but those score sheets that Tom Conlon was referring to, I think those would be very helpful if those were available to us while we were looking at those projects in a little more detail in the month of July. At least it would be for me. So I don't know if you have control over when we could get the cheat sheets or not.
I would be happy to discuss it among staff. I don't know that we had decided that, but we'll be happy to talk about it.
Okay, and I'm looking around to see if I got any other hands raised. Seeing none, I'll call for the question. If you are in favor of the motion to accept the staff's listing, raise your hand. If you are opposed, raise your hand. I see no opposition. If you are abstaining, let us know by raising your hand. Motion
John,
carries. Oh, yeah.
John,
what did I miss?
John, do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, this is also not an action item. We appreciate getting the consensus of the committee, but there's no need for action tonight on this item.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mos. And by the way, we did forget to do something if we do have a quorum, and we might have had a quorum and lost them because we didn't take action on the minutes from the last meeting because we were waiting for a quorum. Did we wait too long, Drew? Have we lost our quorum now?
I think we've lost the quorum at this hour.
But did we have the quorum during the meeting?
It doesn't even matter, Mosa, because this was a non-action item anyways. This is just basically a show of support for
But in fact, if we had a quorum at the beginning of the meeting, I think the quorum continues, you know. That's what I meant.
Oh,
I don't understand.
I don't know how that works. If we had a quorum and lost a quorum, do we still take action on the minutes?
No,
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair. I think you have to have a quorum present during the vote.
right.
Okay.
At the
That's
time of the vote is how I've understood. So if we had a quorum during item 3 and then we lost the quorum, say during this item, we would not be able to do action on this item without that quorum. At least that's how I've understood it.
So next month we'll have a 3-hour meeting. So because we got to vote on the minutes for 2 meetings then.
Yes.
Okay.
But for you-
We'll get
but for you, Chair
some more people from the public in at that meeting too.
We'll have less attendance if we do that.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, guys, anything else on your list? Drew?
The next item, just the SCTA RCPA board
Oh,
agenda
yeah.
for July, still in the draft form. But just to show you the items that will go before the board. On the regular calendar, an update on the state budget, MTC grant opportunity, the SCTA funding program we just heard, community engagement, a report out on the future of transit ad hoc, Sebastopol Climate Action Framework that was prepared by Phoebe Golden, who is a Civic Spark Fellow here with City of Sebastopol and RCPA. And then a report on the climate ad hoc. Any questions? Feel free to let me or any other staff know.
Is this an appropriate time to ask a question on Huffman's pretty decent questions on Highway 37, the interim and long range plan? And I don't want to take up people's time if they haven't read them. It's a very long letter that came out about 3 weeks ago, I believe. And I guess my question just goes to, did that letter compromise efforts to move forward on an interim Highway 37 fix?
So, Mr. Chair, I can say that we had a comprehensive response to the congressman's letter that has been provided to him and his staff. I think we could probably talk for another hour and a half about that letter.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
That's in the future.
Yeah. But so far it's being dealt with and we don't see any derailment taking place on Highway 37 interim.
We're continuing to move forward.
Thank you.
I've not seen that letter. Where did it show up?
I don't remember where I saw it, Steve. I think it got circulated about 3 or 4 weeks ago, David? Something like that, 3 weeks ago, maybe?
Sounds about right. I was not aware that it was out in the public.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but I got a copy of it. I'm kind of public, but yeah, Steve, if I've got it, if I'm okay to send it, does anybody know? I mean, it's a public, I think it is a public document because he sent it to the 4 county committee, did he not? Or did he send it to you guys?
I believe he sent it to MTC, but I'm not sure how it got out.
That's public.
But you're right, it is a public document and we can circulate it if that's what you wish to do.
And David, do I understand you correctly that SCTA has issued a written response to that letter?
It was a group response led by MTC, so that all the counties contribute to that and Caltrans.
Thank you. If I could see both of those, I'd appreciate it.
We'll look into that.
Thank you.
All right, gang. Thank you, guys. Good meeting, long meeting, but we're not too far over time. Thank you, guys.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Quorum next time.
Yeah.